Hello and good morning. It is Saturday, July 25th. This is Terry Allen. I have a lot to talk about. There's a lot of stuff going on. It is Saturday. I realize that. But there is so much going on that everybody needs to talk about it. I need to talk about it. So here's one of the things that I wanted to mention about the defunding the police department. The progressives specifically, and probably most of the Democrats and Republicans obviously, don't want to get rid of police. We have to have police. We need police. It's very obvious. But there's certain situations, like when you're dealing with mentally ill people, when you're dealing with certain situations of homelessness, even with the riot situation where you're dealing with a part of the population that's extremely angry about what's going on. I have a specific story that I am personally aware of. I have a friend that lives in South Pasadena, and she lives in a building, an apartment building, where there was a mentally ill actress. Her name was Vanessa Marquez, and she was an actress on the ER TV show. She became mentally ill and had some very bad issues with a fear of being around people. She locked herself in her apartment. They had several people that would check in on her every so often. This was in 2018. They were called to check in on her, and the police came to talk to her. They were able to talk through the door, and they finally were able to get the door open. She was sitting on her bed, and she had a BB gun because she was extremely paranoid about what was going on. The police, when they saw the BB gun, they began to fire without even discussing anything. I believe there were 15 shots fired, even through the walls. My friend said that they had to patch the walls. There were so many bullet holes everywhere. They killed her. And that is a perfect example of why we need to not defund the police, but we need to divert some of the funding from the police department into other social services. The situation where the police deal with everything with violence and, shoot first and think later. There's been many incidents of problems in this area. So one of the things you've got to understand is there is so much freaking misinformation in the media. We have a huge problem with lies. When the conservatives talk about defunding the police, and this is the politicians, they lie. Trump lies and said that the Democrats want to get rid of the police. Well, that is complete bullshit. And it angers me that people believe it, because I have conservative friends and that's what they tell me. Oh, the Democrats want to get rid of the police. It's absolute bullshit. The other thing that I hear all the time is they call me a commie, okay? It's really hilarious. A lot of my family are conservatives, religious conservatives. They have a complete misunderstanding of reality. When I talk to them, I might as well be talking to Sean Hannity or Rush Limbaugh, for Christ's sake, because they spout the same garbage that they watched the night before. And it's political. It's done specifically to motivate the population to vote certain ways. And that is a sad situation in this country. It's called propaganda. It's not news, it's propaganda. So until the American population educates itself and tries to understand what's really going on, then nothing substantial is going to change. Here's another example. What I really hate is when I criticize the military and what the government is doing. They call me that I'm an American and that I hate America. And that makes me so freaking pissed when I hear that, because there is nothing wrong with identifying the problems with our military and our government. You can see the evidence right now what's wrong with the government. It's handing trillions of dollars off to major corporations. They bailed out the cruise ship industry, for Christ's sake. And the ships are registered in the Bahamas. They're not even American companies. They have been sending billions and billions of dollars to big corporations, to banks, and then now they're getting ready to vote on an unemployment legislation about cutting the benefits to the unemployed. There was the minimum that I think you can get from unemployment is a couple $100. I think the maximum is about $450 a week. I was unemployed for 2 weeks, one in May and one in June, and I collected unemployment. I was able to get $450 plus the $600 a week, which not quite made up for what I normally make, but it allowed me to pay my rent and it allowed me to maintain my situation as it is. Now, it's not any of our fault that we are being confined to our apartments and we were told not to go to work. That has nothing to do with any decisions that we have made. But for the government to start worrying about deficits now and trying to cut unemployment right at a critical time is absolute insanity. What in the hell is wrong with the conservatives? They just don't understand what in the hell is going on. And I can understand the politicians because they've got plenty of money. Their donors have plenty of money. They're doing just fine. Remember that stupid video that Nancy Pelosi did at her home with her 2 giant refrigerators? I believe they were each $12,000. And she was talking about stocking it with ice cream, and isn't it wonderful? She's so out of touch with reality. What does she have? I don't know. She's worth $100 million. In her eyes, everything is fine. What's your problem? Just work a little harder. We don't want to pay the unemployed too much because they might decide to stay home and not go to work. Give me a freaking break. We have serious economic issues going on right now. We need the economy to continue to function. We need the employees to be in a situation where they can go back to existing companies. We have companies that are shutting their doors permanently. What is going to end up happening is that these large corporations that got huge funds from the government are going to start coming in and buying up these companies and either dismantling them or taking them over and hiring cheap labor to run them. This is insanity, and it should anger you as much as it angers me. So, what we need to do is somehow educate the population. We don't have a lot of time. Unfortunately, there's not enough voices to explain what's going on. There's not enough time to study history. There's not enough time for Americans to really make a informed decision on who they want to vote for. Now, I've been blasting Biden constantly because of his stupid record, his working on NAFTA and supporting NAFTA and pushing for NAFTA. That treaty was a disaster. I used to go to Mexico all the time to work. I installed printing equipment in Mexico. When NAFTA passed, and that gave the banks the authority to take the peso and peg it to whatever number they wanted based on what they thought the condition of the economy was. And within 2 weeks, they had devaluated the peso. It was at 3 pesos to $1, and in 2 weeks they had devalued it to 7 pesos to the dollar. That is cutting the value of the peso in half. I never went back to Mexico after that. They could not afford any of the equipment that we were selling. They could not afford the service that we were supplying. Their economy took a nosedive. We ended up bringing factories into what was called the Maquiladoras, which is a zone along the border, Tijuana, where the factories were being built, and the labor was 57 cents an hour. Now, I know I've talked about this before, but I need people to understand exactly what happens when we deregulate capitalism. Capitalism will always go towards the cheapest labor that it can find unless you regulate it. Now, for a company like Hewlett-Packard, like different auto manufacturers, different industries in general, allowing corporations to close their plants in the United States, lay off all of their workers, and move to China or Vietnam or Mexico, where the labor is way cheaper than it is here, is criminal. It should be illegal. I got a feeling that you can thank Joe Biden for some of that, because he's a senator of Delaware, or he was, and you can see the situation in Delaware. Many corporations are registered in Delaware because of the way they have the corporate tax structure set up there. They're allowing companies to do that has destroyed our economy. It has put into a situation since Reagan where our wages have not kept up with inflation for 40 years. That is a fact. That is why back in the 60s and the 70s, I remember my father was able to work. He paid for the house payment. We were able to have education, food on the table with only one parent working. My mother was a housewife. She took care of the kids, picked us up from school, etc. The mortgage payment was 1/8 of his salary. Now, mortgage payments are about 50% of the salaries, and you need 2 incomes to be able to afford a house. That is why you have so many homeless people now. It's rampant in this country. You have houses being sold at half price to banks and resold. The apartments are filling up because people can't afford to have a house. Now let me explain what happened in 2008. I had a business. I had employees in a building. When the 2008 crash hit, what happened was I had accounts receivable which I could not collect on. I had customers that quit paying all of their bills. Everybody was freaking out. You probably remember. Everything just went to a screeching halt. I could not recover from that. I didn't get 1 cent from the government. Not 1 cent. I laid off all my employees. I got out of the building. I had to reduce all of my costs. And I had nothing to do with the housing industry. I had nothing to do with the banking industry. The banks destroyed our economy, and the government stepped in and handed the banks trillions of dollars. I know that people think, oh, it was 800 billion, and they all paid it back, and that's absolute bullshit. The banks did not pay that back, except with more money from the government. It ended up being several $1 trillion that the banks got. With their criminal operations, they brought the economy to its knees. Not a single banker went to jail. And then you had a reduction of wages. We had a horrible situation. I finally had to file for bankruptcy because of it. Nothing that I did. And now you know that we have in the new bankruptcy bills or the new bankruptcy bill is not new, but back then that Joe Biden sponsored and pushed for, made it more difficult to file for bankruptcy. And one of the things that we have to do is to fill out an application and a questionnaire. And what I found very interesting when I had to fill this questionnaire out is that one of the questions was, why did you go bankrupt? Was it because you spent too much? Did you run your credit cards up to their limits? Did you do this? Did you do that? You couldn't control your spending. The one question they didn't ask is if we had gotten fucked by the government and the banks. That question was never asked. But for the majority of the people that filed for bankruptcy at that time, that was the reason. So, for people to understand reality, you've got to understand what's going on if you're going to solve this problem. Now, I hate to say this, but I may end up having to vote for Joe Biden. And I feel like cutting my wrists because of it, because he's absolutely horrible with policy. But it's him or Trump. And the direction that we're going with Trump is very dangerous. Now, I don't expect Biden to do anything different about Iran or Venezuela or the situation in the Middle East with our military. The Democrats seem to be handing Trump anything he wants. They talk about how dangerous Trump is, oh my God, but they give him billions of dollars extra in the military budget that he didn't even ask for. Bernie Sanders put a bill forward this week asking to reduce the military budget by just 10%. The military budget in the United States is 61% of our budget. That is insane. That is what happens when an empire tries to push its will on the world, which is what we are doing and why the world is getting very pissed at the United States. We couldn't get hardly any Democrats to vote for it. Vote for just cutting 10%. We have an offensive, aggressive military that is making enemies around the world because we want to steal the natural resources from these countries and put in the dictators that will bow to our wishes. That is exactly what we're doing. We have a mercenary army for the banks and the international corporations, and that is a fact. And if anyone says that what's going on is wrong, somehow we hate America, give me a freaking break. Because you don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're talking about. You don't know what the military has done in the last 50 years. You have never read a history book. You don't know what Brzezinski did when he set up what was called the Ark of Crises in the 70s. They funded the Mujahideen, which they knew was an insane, radical Muslim fundamentalist religion. They funded and armed these maniacs in Afghanistan to fight against the Soviet Union. Well, what happened when the Soviet Union dissolved? This group became Al-Qaeda, and they identified the United States, the ones that had actually created them and gave them power that they never had. They turned on us because of what we were doing in the Middle East. So you have a horrible situation now, and we caused it, and now we have spent trillions of dollars in the Middle East to our military-industrial complex to maintain control of the natural resources in the Middle East. That's what's going on, and those trillions of dollars have come out of my pocket and your pocket. They have come out of our wages. Our infrastructure is falling apart because of it. The 1% are bleeding us dry. And we may never recover from this if the American people do not wake up soon and figure out what's really going on and get the huevos to stop it. We need more progressives in Congress and the Senate. We need to push for the Democratic Party to go to the left. We are in a socialist country already. I'm sick of being called a commie. It's stupid. Get a freaking dictionary, will you, and figure out what the difference is between a communist and a socialist is. Europe is very socialist because what they do is they limit what the rich can do to the countries. They have a lot of social programs. They make sure that the wages are high. They have extra vacation time. Their taxes are higher, but they get a lot for it. They get Medicare for all, and they get free college. The benefits to the working class in Europe are much better than what we've got here. We have the worst transfer of wealth in the history of the world, going out of the middle class and the poor into the 1% and the military-industrial complex. That is what's happening, and that is why our country is falling apart. That needs to change quickly. We do not need to be in the Middle East. We need to let that situation simmer down, and we need to do something about Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is the country that is funding for Al-Qaeda and the terrorists. That is where it's coming from. It is not Iran. And people do not get it. They listen to the bullshit. We have Iran surrounded. We in 1953, and I say we because I'm saying that the CIA and the Mossad and MI6, I believe it was at the time, out of England, were angry that the Anglo-Persian oil company was kicked out by the president that was elected in 1953. We came in and set up an operation to get rid of him and put the Shah back in so that we could bring in back in the oil company and loot the country once again. And that Anglo-Persian oil company became British Petroleum, BP. You see it everywhere, the little flower emblem. So history is not what you think. There are agendas, there are conspiracies that go on all the time, and if we want to stop this situation, one of the best ways we can do it is we need to pursue the Epstein case, because that is the Achilles heel of the oligarchy and the 1%. We can take them out by going after the 1%, the pedophiles and the billionaires that were involved with Epstein and this Mossad operation that was going on, blackmailing politicians, getting the billionaires to have sex with underage girls, and had everything taped. You saw what happened when Epstein was suicided. Suddenly everybody stopped talking about it. Well, now finally we've got Maxwell in jail. We need to somehow keep her alive. I don't know if that's going to be possible, because we're dealing with some very powerful people that at the top that have billions of dollars that can make things happen, and they can make people disappear. If they don't like what you and I are saying, they can make us disappear. You have a situation where they are taking down videos off of YouTube and Facebook. They are deplatforming people and organizations that are trying to get the truth out. We are in a war with the oligarchy. And so what people need to know, like what we're getting in Portland, is going to spread across this country, because if the government and these idiots in the Democratic and Republican Party push us to the wall, put their foot on our neck, and try to take everything they can from us and try to create a feudalist system, and look up what feudalism is, because it's like unbridled capitalism. It is where you've got a very rich family at the top, a royal family in some cases, and the rest are poor and trying to survive. If you push Americans to that brink where we have nothing to lose, look out, because this is going to get nasty. People are pissed, people are angry, and when they've got nothing to lose, they're going to come after the politicians that caused this mess. They are going to come after the rich. They are going to come over those walls in those gated communities. So I'm not threatening anybody. I'm just predicting that this is what's going to happen. And it's inevitable if this continues to go on. Franklin Roosevelt told the rich at the time in 1933, when he was trying to pass banking regulations and put in legislation to put people back to work, that he told them that you either give back some of that money or they're going to take all of it. So they were smart enough to realize, well, the oligarchy and the 1% are not smart enough now. They think that they earned this money. Jeff Bezos of Amazon made $13 billion in one day, and we are cutting unemployment? What in the hell is going on? How can people think that that's okay? How is it possible? People think we're in a capitalist situation, that they can just run roughshod over anybody that they want, destroy the middle class just because it's called capitalism. We have a two-tiered socialist situation on our hands. We have public high schools and elementary schools. We have police. We have fire. We have highway systems. We have water management. We have sewer systems. We have electric grids. We have a lot of things that make our society the way it is, our standard of living the way it is, and those are socialist programs. And if you don't get that, then you must be an idiot, because that's what it is. But what's happening now is that is all falling apart because the funding has been taken away and given to the 1%. And so what we've got now is corporate welfare. We've got welfare for the rich, because when the banks start to collapse and these big corporations have a little trouble in a normal capitalist system, they would have to file for bankruptcy. But now they go running to the government for their socialist handouts. They don't need the money. We need to keep the population alive and functioning. That will keep these companies afloat. So I don't know how to educate people enough. I don't have any subscribers hardly yet. I'm hoping that I will get more. But people need to start listening to Jimmy Dore and the Rational National. We need to start listening to Kyle Kulinski. The Young Turks are pretty good. They have a little problem with the Democratic Party. But otherwise, they are very truthful about what's going on. There's many others that we need to start listening to, and we need to start supporting progressive candidates as quickly as possible. We have very little time left. So I'm talking to Washington, D.C. now. If you want the pitchforks and the guillotines being set up, then you continue the way you're going, because I predict that's the way it's going to end up. You're going to have a French Revolution style solution to this problem. And if you don't understand that, then you better read history, because it's coming. And if you continue to do what you're doing, it's going to happen. So I am going to sign off for now. This is Terry Allen. I am going to try and work on some new videos. I've got some new camera equipment and lighting. I'm going to try to make the channel more professional looking. So right now all I can do is just rant. But people, pick up some history books. And what I'm talking about is history books of people that lived through it at the time. Do not pick up a high school history book. It will only lead you down the wrong path. Those books are useless. You need to read the writings of people that lived at the time. Read what Benjamin Franklin said. Read what George Washington wrote about. Read what Abraham Lincoln said. Franklin Roosevelt, Kennedy, some of our best, best patriots and founders and politicians from the past. Read the book from Smedley Butler, the general that wrote a book called The War is a Racket. Try to find as many history books that you can get. Read about the Sykes-Picot Act in the Middle East after World War I. Find out exactly why World War I was fought. It was fought over the labor movement in Russia and in Germany. The labor movement were getting stronger. The royal families were scared shitless because of what happened to the Tsar, and they set up a situation where their goal was for Russia and Germany to destroy each other. They weren't able to completely make that happen. They financed Adolf Hitler. They knew exactly what he was. They knew that he was a psycho, but they funded and armed him anyway. AT&T built his phone system. We had the steel industry. We had rail there. We were making money off of the concentration slave labor camps. There is history of America that you need to learn. We have interfered with elections all over the world, and for the Republicans and the Democrats, well, mostly the moron Democrats pushing this crazy Russian conspiracy about how they interfered with our election, give me a freaking break. We have interfered with their elections. We interfered with Palestine elections. We've interfered in Chile, in Central America. We have interfered with so many elections over the years. For us to be upset about $4,500 that was spent on Facebook, for God's sake, and blaming the Russians somehow for Hillary Clinton's loss is insanity. It's stupid. It doesn't make sense. How can anybody possibly believe it? Except they're listening to the propaganda from the corporate media. And the best thing that you could do is turn that garbage off and get on YouTube and start doing searches and find out what's really going on before they shut YouTube down. We're just lucky that we've got it right now. So I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to work on a few more videos. We need to get educated before it is too late. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good day.